about 5 years. And the significant event for us was that the CN was cutting over to a new track, which would give us an opportunity to complete the work and extend our runway to 8,900 feet. So that was a huge deal for us as a community.
And wasn't there some type of 5K race or something?
There was also the Dawn of the Dunes.
Yeah.
In fact, it was last Sunday. We've had so much go on this week.
The Dawn of the Dunes.
The Dawn of the Dunes. It was the second year. Had even more people. I think it was about 600. And the marathoners, because it was a marathon, half marathon, and a 5K race. The marathoners say it's one of the best courses in the marathon, I guess, cadre. I don't know anything about races, as you can tell, but they enjoy the course at the Dawn of the Dunes. I mean, it's along the Indiana National Lakeshore. It's along Marquette Park in the Miller neighborhood of Gary, so it's a beautiful race.
I love Miller, Indiana. I've got some really good friends over there, and I love Gary. I've said this on this program, and I think it compels me to say it again now that we have you here. My father, God bless him, when he won medals in World War II, and he was considered a hero. And when he came back to the States, much like the story we had reflected of Muhammad Ali saying he had his gold medal and he couldn't get a hamburger or a hot dog in Louisville.
Sure.
My dad came back from World War II and he couldn't get jobs in the St. Louis area. They just weren't hiring coloreds or Negroes back then. So a couple of his buddies who were from Gary, and I think one of his cousins called him up and says, and his nickname was Bud, said, Bud, you've got to come to Gary. You can work in the steel mill.
In the steel mill, they were hiring.
So I feel an affinity toward and for Gary. Let me ask you this. What's been the best part about your job so far, and what's been your biggest challenge?
The best part is really getting to meet people. We had a fall festival on Friday, and to spend time with the kids and even their parents. Yesterday, I went into a barber shop, and, everybody stopped. They wanted to take a picture, and, they were so supportive and encouraging. That same day, I went next door to one of the local pubs. Same thing. So it's really the support of the people. At the same time, one of the greatest challenges is also connected to the people, because for so long they've had people in public office make promises and not keep them. They can also be very cynical. They can also be very critical. I've had people come up to me and say, oh, it's great that you paved these streets, but what about the alleys? And, I kind of take a page from your book and say, really?
Are you paying attention? You can only do like 7 things at one time.
Exactly. But they want that 8th thing done.
There you go.
But I understand that. I do.
Let me remind our listeners of our telephone connection. I'm fired up because I really, really am a fan of this young lady. She's the mayor of Gary, Indiana, the Honorable Karen Freeman Wilson. If you have questions, you have comments, call us now at 312-591-V103. Over the years that I've been doing this program, I ask kind of a standard political question, especially since the president's been in office. I ask if you could issue a grade on a political report card, what grade would you give President Obama? Would you give him an A, a B, a C, a D, an F, or an incomplete? What would you give him, Madam Mayor?
You must have been in our house yesterday, Ty. It has to be an A. My husband and I were actually talking about this yesterday, and you've got an economy that is better than it's ever been.
Right.
Unemployment the lowest, stock market the highest.
The jobless rate just came out a couple of weeks ago, and the people applying for unemployment is down.
More people insured than any in the history. This president has kept promises that other presidents have made and have not been able to keep. And people are saying that he has a low approval rating. Why do you think that is?
And he inherited all of that mess on Wall Street.
And
he didn't create it.
Inherited it and fixed it. Look at the auto industry. Look at Ford. Look at, the other automakers who had the benefit of that bailout. Look at the banking and insurance industry that had the benefit of those bailouts. And even in the midst of that, people have the audacity to criticize. And if you look at the foreign policy, yes, we have ISIS, but even prior to ISIS, look at all of the progress that he had made in Afghanistan, in other sections of the Middle East. And people have the nerve to say that they don't approve of his job. Why is that? Does it have something to do with the color of his skin? I don't know.
You're not saying, you're just saying.
I'm just saying.
All right, our telephone connection, area code 312. The number is 591-V103. I'm so happy to have the mayor of Gary, Indiana, the Honorable Karen Freeman Wilson. You know, when President Obama first took office, one of the first things I recall him doing was going to the Middle East and reaching out to Muslim leaders that both President Bush's, Daddy Bush, and the other President Bush basically said they were persona non grata. He reached out.
He absolutely reached out because he is a uniter and not a divider. And notwithstanding the disrespect that you have seen from Congress and from other political leaders whose politics are different, he has continued to be statesmanlike in his demeanor towards them.
Chicago has had the credo, the city that works. What's the credo for Gary?
Gary is the city of the century, but it's also the city of it's been the magic city. In fact, that was the credo in the 1920s because it was a city that saw exponential growth.
The magic city.
The magic city.
Well, you know, I've shared this with people off the air. I haven't said it on the air that much. I think I may have mentioned it one time. I've interviewed so many famous people over the years. I remember the first major concert that I emceed was an Easter Sunday back in the early 70s. It was the Jackson 5. So you've got the famous Jackson family from Gary, Indiana. I'm a sports fanatic. I'm not just a fan. I'm a sports fanatic, so I know Fred Williamson. And Fred the Hammer, time and time again, has said, I'm from Gary, I'm from Gary. And I'm wondering, are they doing anything to give something back?
You know, actually, the Jackson family, Mrs. Jackson in particular, has been extremely gracious. There's a housing project that is centered around Michael Jackson's birth home. But in addition to the housing project that we are working on, Mrs. Jackson is actually working to maintain both the birth home and some contiguous houses. There's a new gift shop that is right next door to Michael Jackson's birth home, 2300 Jackson Street. And she's been a tremendous partner during the course of our administration and just an all-around class act. I love Mrs. Jackson.
Back in the early days when I started in radio, that was when Mayor Hatcher was elected.
Sure.
And to me, that was just as monumental as Mayor Washington being elected mayor of this town. So you've got a great legacy to build on, but as you look back now, being the mayor of a town like the Magic City, the town that you're basically the head administrator of now, did you always have ambitions and say, that's maybe something I'd like to do?
I always wanted to be mayor, and the reason was because of Mayor Hatcher.
Okay.
I had an opportunity at the age of 7 to meet him, and he has always been a source of inspiration. It is an honor to stand on his shoulders.